here's some of the players that we can highlight, and then you can take it from there. So first and foremost, we've got Logan Lee, 48 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks in 2021.
And Logan, I thought, really came along as the season went on. He's a big guy. I mean, he probably is going to gain some weight during this offseason. He's 6'5", 270. He's listed as 277, but I don't think that's been updated. He'll get another summer to get his weight up a bit more. I think ideally they'd probably like him closer to 290 would be just a guess. But we've seen, I mean, Matt Nelson, who's now playing tackle, offensive tackle for the Lions, he ran pretty thin at like 6'7", 6'8". So they don't mind running with some more slender guys in there. They've got Noah Shannon, who will get a lot of snaps there. But Logan Lee really, I thought, developed as a pass rusher last year. Noah Shannon's kind of your prototypical run stopper. He's a big body, not as tall, obviously, but he's a guy who's probably going to fill some gaps this year. And he seems to have improved each year. He's not been, dynamic in pass rushing, but they don't really need him to be. If they can develop guys like Lukas Van Ness and certainly Joe Evans he's kind of a pass rush specialist, but Lukas Van Ness had a really good year as a freshman. You see the numbers there, 33 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss with 7 sacks. Those are pretty good numbers for a team that they run. Iowa likes to run 6 to 8 guys at those positions. I think Jones, he missed some time last year. Deontay Craig missed some time last year, but most of these guys stayed healthy. And Zach Van Valkenburg, he was a mainstay at that one of the 2 defensive end positions. So I think Lukas Van Ness, I know he's not listed as a starter. Let me go back to the depth chart here. Right now, according to the spring depth chart, Lukas Van Ness is listed as the backup behind Noah Shannon at tackle. So you've got him listed here as defensive end, but they'll run him both ways, Mark. And that's the beauty. And you look at, if someone wants to take a peek at the Iowa football roster, I find it intriguing. There are 3 guys listed on the Iowa roster who are listed specifically as defensive ends. And one of those, I look at one of them is Brennan Sweeney, who I believe was a walk-on when he got here, and I think he still is. And the same can be said for Anu Doken. I think I'm pronouncing his name right as well. He's a local kid from Iowa City. The only guy who's a scholarship player who's listed as a defensive end is Joe Evans. Everyone else is a DL, a defensive lineman. So they're going to run them both ways. Aaron Graves is a perfect example of that. Even AJ Epinesa, he was running inside, he was running out. Iowa likes to run stunts, and they were successful with those stunts last year. If they didn't have good stunt action last year, we wouldn't have seen those 7 sacks or really any sacks, because Iowa did have problems in man-to-man situations at those defensive end spots. So I like Lukas Van Ness a lot. I think he gives him good length, good athleticism, and he just kind of has a knack for it. It reminds me a little bit of maybe a slightly smaller Anthony Nelson, who's carved out a nice role in the NFL as well.
Yeah, that was the Daily Iowan projecting that even though Van Ness was used as a defensive tackle last year, that they projected him as more of an end. Now we see the spring depth chart come out with him at tackle. And then you touched upon John Wagner as well.
Yeah, John Wagner is listed as your starter at left end, and he's kind of the guy that we've been waiting for. I mean, kind of like Cody Ince was, and now, of course, Cody Ince, maybe compare him to Justin Britt on the offensive line. Guys who seem to have the physical traits. Wagner listed at 6'5", 266. He's a big guy out of Dowling, but he's a senior. I mean, it's now or never for a guy like John Wagner, and he's another guy who's dealt with injuries, Mark. So can he stay healthy? Hopefully he has a healthy spring practice. These guys, you just hate to see guys miss an entire spring practice. It's such a blow to development. And he's a guy who's got a lot of upside. I could say the same thing about Deontay Craig, who we haven't talked about. Slightly smaller. Let me look at his height and weight. He's listed, actually, I could look at the depth chart. He's listed at 6'3", 263. But again, seemed to be one of the more aggressive, gritty guys on the outside for Iowa when he was healthy. I know he missed some time last year, so his development will be important. A couple of guys we haven't brought up, Chris Reams, Louis Steck. I think both of those guys I think Chris Reams is walk-on both of those guys played last year and are big bodies. Chris Reams listed at 6'7", 270 mark. Trying to think, Louis Steck, I think he was listed, he might have even been a little bit heavier. I think he's about 6'4", or excuse me, 264. I want to say he was closer to 6'2", maybe 6'1", somewhere in there. But they're not afraid to play guys who are walk-ons, who've been in the program for a couple of years. As long as they can get 7 to 8 guys they're comfortable with running, that seems to be what Kelvin Bell wants to do. And that I've been very complimentary of Kelvin Bell, because I'm not knowledgeable enough to break down, where he ranks in the Big Ten as far as the defensive line coach position, but he has found a way to develop enough guys each year to have 6 to 8 guys. I don't remember the last time they didn't have 6 to 8 guys they'd run, and they're not going to run them if they're not comfortable. But it seemed like even years prior, even under Norm Parker, there were times where I would only run maybe 6 guys, 5 or 6 guys, and you have these little, like Dan Persa, run you all over the field and guys get wore out. That's not happening now. Fatigue does not seem to be a problem with Iowa's defensive line because they have enough bodies back there. I think they got good personnel, the defensive line. I remember we published a story, a friend who writes for my website here in Story County. Once in a while, we'll do a feature article on a position or something, especially preseason, and we may do that again this year. But remember, he wrote a column last year about, just not worrying about the defense. You just don't worry about it here. And I can say that every year. Like, these are going to be I'm going to enjoy doing these shows over the coming weeks, Mark, but I'm just not going to be concerned. I just don't care, because you just know that they're going to find a way to develop depth there. Now, injuries can derail you, but again, when you have depth, it solves a lot of those problems.